Unfortunately, we were quite unable to work it. He has also been listening to a certain amount of music. Now, I'm going to ask him once more to go over the Babcock sentence that I did, and also to take away 7 from 100. Now, Christopher, would you be prepared to do that for me, please?
Well, you've got me at what I would call my period of time when I am capable of doing it.
Right. Well, I'll now repeat the sentence. To be rich and prosperous, a nation must have a safe, secure supply of wood.
To be rich and prosperous, a nation must have a safe, secure supply of wood. I got the two right.
Well done. Now, would you like to take away 7 from 100 again?
93, 86, 79, 72, 66, 72, whatever it is, 65, 58, 51, 40, I can see you're interested still, 44, 37, 30, 23, 23. Now I'm off again, Humphrey. In my period of time, I'm off again for a long period, but you won't notice probably that I've gone away at all.
Perhaps half a dozen times during the experiment, I would be withdrawn from my surroundings and from myself, and have an experience, a state of euphoria, for a period of time that didn't end for me. It didn't last for minutes or hours, but for months.
I do try and assure you that from my point of view, between the time that I perhaps begin this sentence and the time that I end it, I shall have gone a long time will be elapsed, Humphrey. And
the psychiatrists afterwards, and common sense, they all said, this is nonsense. You couldn't have had these experiences because there was no time, as the film shows, there's no time for you to have them in. And the psychiatrists would speak, and I accept this, that I was simply showing the symptoms of what they call the disintegration of the ego. I accept that too. At the same time, they didn't have the experience. And when I look back, even now, after 30 years, when I remember that after the experiment, I remember that afternoon, not as so many minutes spent in my drawing room, interrupted by these strange excursions in time, but as years and years of heavenly bliss, interrupted by short periods in my drawing room. When I recall it, and when I recall various other symptoms, I think the simplest explanation is that I had these experiences, that they were real, and that they took place outside time.
I am moving at this moment from one time into another time and back again. And I'm not so conscious, Humphrey, of moving myself in space, but I'm extremely conscious of moving in time, of things having no succession, and that there be no absolute time, no absolute space. It is simply what we impose on the outside world.
The BBC was worried. Could the film be broadcast? Mayhew himself was all in favour, but viewing the footage, it was hard to judge the true significance of his experience. Expert advice was called for, and a special committee of psychiatrists, philosophers and theologians assembled. Amongst those shown the film was Canon Besser from Cambridge University. From a religious standpoint, he felt Mayhew's mystical adventure had been obtained on the cheap. The others agreed, and the committee had no hesitation in reaching a verdict when asked by the BBC whether or not Mayhew's experience was valid. The film was never shown.
I think that the experience was valid. I think, for the reasons I've given, that you can dismiss it as a dreamlike hallucination which lasted a fraction of a second, owing to the disintegration of my ego and so on, Or you can say with me, it was a real experience which happened outside time. And that is my view. And for various sort of associated symptoms, I would say that on that occasion, by a shortcut, I did visit the world known to the mystics and to some mentally sick people. And therefore, to that extent, I'd say it is valid.
Huxley, too, was attacked by theologians. The Roman Catholic scholar R.C. Zehner wrote an article dismissing the doors of perception. He argued that wide differences in people's response to the drug cast doubt on individual claims to enlightenment. So that he could write with authority, Zehner arranged to take a dose of mescaline himself. Overcome by hysterical laughter, he found the experience to be spiritually empty, and he concluded that Huxley's claims had no more credibility than the delusions of a lunatic. Zehner maintained that the visions of the great Christian mystics were something entirely different. Those who believe in the value of psychedelic drugs see no clear distinction.
I believe that the experiences one has under LSD are very similar, even identical with mystical experiences. There has been discussion along this with scientists, but if you compare the reports of mystics, of the saints, the text reports with reports on people who had mystical experience under LSD, you cannot find any difference.
Can the mystical experience of saints really be duplicated by chemical means? 30 years after R.C. Zehner raised the question, his successors at the University of Oxford are still debating it. One of them is Richard Swinburne of Oriel College, who is Nolloth Professor of the Philosophy of the Christian Religion.
Taking drugs to get into the presence of God is barging into the presence of God. And if you just go and have an experience, you're simply not equipped to recognize the experience for what it is and to react to it in the right way. So, for that reason, no, I wouldn't take drugs. There's so much more to religion, indeed almost everything more to religion than having experience. It's a dedication to a way of life which indeed can be very much reinforced by experience, but experience isn't the point of it.
Spiritual self-transcendence was hardly the ambition of another group interested in LSD and mescaline during the 1950s. The American government were attracted to hallucinogenic drugs for less savory purposes. Former intelligence officer and author John Marks has uncovered the CIA's secret research with LSD.